from his trip to China with nothing to show for it. President Trump faces new decisions in the war with Iran. Pakistan's interior minister visited Tehran yesterday to discuss specific agreements in negotiations to end the war. This all comes as a leader in Iran's parliament said new plans for traffic in the Strait of Hormuz would be, quote, unveiled soon. Meanwhile, with the war now in its third month with no end in sight, the New York Times reports some top aides have drafted plans for a return to military strikes as negotiations stall. And there are new signs Trump's war of choice isn't living up to the administration's claims. It's building. A U.S. official confirmed to MS Now that about 70% of Iran's mobile missile launchers remain viable. And Iran has also retained roughly 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile. To get into all this, John Brennan, the former CIA director and MS Now senior national security intelligence analyst. Director Brennan, thank you, as always, for coming to the weekend. To that last point, let's play Trump's admin's claims that Iran's missile capabilities are all gone, decimated, destroyed.
Obliterated.
Their missiles are mostly decimated. They have probably 19%, but not a lot by comparison to what they had.
Their missile launching capability has been substantially degraded.
Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed.
They have some missiles, but not very many. I think we're in very good shape.
Their missile program is functionally destroyed. Launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated.
Their communications are gone. Missiles are gone. Launches are gone.
Now, I'm not good at math, nor have I ever been to war. However, I think 18 to 19% is a lot different than what we actually know based on the reporting, which is 70% of the missile launchers are still viable. 70% of the pre-war missile stockpile still there. How dangerous is it for the administration to run around saying things like this when the intel tells a completely different story?
I think it's always dangerous when the President of the United States misleads the public and lies about things like this, particularly, as you said, during war. It's clear that their comments are inconsistent with all the reporting that's come out about the intelligence community assessments that determined that still Iran has a large portion of its missile capabilities and inventory. It also is inconsistent with the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is closed down. Because if, in fact, the Iranians' inventory was depleted as much as they say, I don't think we'd have the same concerns as far as the traffic that's coming through the Strait of Hormuz. It's not just the fast boats. The fast boats, I think they feel that they can take care of, but it's the missile capability that the Iranians still have along the coast that lines the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. Well, speaking on that point, our colleague David Broad on Wednesday reported on intel on the Strait of Hormuz missiles. The recent intelligence reports found Iran has restored access to 30 of the 33 missile sites it controls along the Strait of Hormuz, which could be used to target American warships and oil tankers transiting the strategic waterway. Director Brennan, this is a war that the president started at 2 in the morning via video on a Saturday, but I digress, and seems unwilling to take all the off-ramps that have been offered to him. Is there an off-ramp that the administration can take or should take to end a conflict that is not only jacking up gas prices in the United States, but is leading to oil shortages in Europe and in Asia?
Well, as you pointed out, this was a senseless, unnecessary war that he decided to go forward on. Yes, I do believe that there are some off-ramps here, but Donald Trump is exceptionally stubborn, and he is unwilling to say that this was a mistake. And he's not going to say it was a mistake. But right now you have the economic blockade, basically, of Iranian ports that the Iranians want to have lifted. You have the basic blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. And so there needs to be some type of equivalency here as far as we can make some concessions as far as allowing the Iranians to be able to import and export some goods through their ports. And the Iranians then can say, okay, we're going to relax our stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz. But it's the economics elements of this. The Iranians are not going to capitulate, even if we start bombing again. They've shown tremendous resilience, and they still have tremendous capability instability. But it's the economic front, both in terms of the impact on the global economy, that needs to be relaxed somehow. But the Iranians are not going to do that as long as the United States continues to maintain the blockade on their ports. So when Donald Trump announced, well, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open and the blockade is going to continue, as soon as I saw that we were going to maintain that blockade without any concessions whatsoever on that economic front for Iran, I knew the Iranians were not going to concede an opening on the Strait of Hormuz, because it's not going to happen.
And meanwhile, despite the mess in Iran, you have senior Trump administration officials focused on Cuba. The AP reported this week that they are preparing to seek an indictment against Raul Castro. And you had CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who went and actually met with Cuban officials in Havana this week at the request of, this was a meeting that happened at the request of the United States. I had some administration officials complaining to me about now Cuba getting thrown into the mix amid already this sort of politically fraught moment with Iran. What do you think the administration is trying to do here? I mean, is this an inevitable outcome of what happened in Venezuela because Cuba is now drying up? They've had a blackout for a record number of weeks now, with people unable to just sort of live any sort of normal daily life?
Well, yes, I think an objective of the Trump administration has been for quite a while that they want to have regime change in Cuba. And Marco Rubio is certainly behind that. And so the Venezuela option was, replacing the senior leader there, Maduro, getting him out, but be able to exploit the situation in Venezuela for U.S. or Trump administration economic benefit. I think they'd like to do the same thing with Havana. They'd like to be able to get the current regime out, but they would like to be able to return Cuba to the days of the 1950s, when in fact you had the casinos and the mobs and other types of things that are there. And they're using economic leverage in terms of the failure of Cuba to be able to import oil, but also these threats of taking legal action against Raul Castro, who's 90 years old or something, for the shoot down of the planes over 25 years ago. So I think this is going to be a concerted effort on the part of the Trump administration officials to try to put as much pressure as they can on the officials in Cuba in order to seek that regime change.